John and Patty. I'm so glad to have my good friends here. This is so fun.
Thank you.
Very fun to be here.
Yep,
Thanks
very
for
fun.
inviting
Thank
us.
you so much.
Yeah.
We'll see how the husband and wife podcast event experience goes. Like that could be interesting. I'll try not to bring up any like super sensitive comments or topics.
You'll hit them, I'm sure.
You'll get them. You can't without talking about Malcom Yards, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's kind of the highlight. But I think you have culminated this experience and come together to work on this experience, but kind of came to it from super different backgrounds, super different, I guess paths, right? So, John, you are in the commercial real estate business. You are a developer,
Right.
but you didn't start out. Did you start out doing that, or you came to it from a family situation? How did you get involved in what you do primarily?
Well, my dad was in the real estate development business since I can remember. I mean, since I was born. And when I got out of college, he said to me and to my siblings, he said, don't plan to go work for your old man. Go get a job, which was fine. I really hadn't thought about going into the real estate business at the time anyway. But so I took a job with the Pillsbury Company. I traveled around the country, mostly in the grain business, which is sort of ironic to me because now I'm one of the not-so-proud owners of the largest grain storage facility in the Twin Cities.
That's awesome. I love that.
But anyway, yeah, I ended up living in California for about 10 years, and he called after 10 years and said, we've kind of gone through this recession, and things are, it's sort of where I either go back into the business or I just retire. I mean, I'm kind of at that age I could, but it'd be more fun if you came back and go into the business with me. And he said the same for my brother and sister. So, and he's fairly persuasive, and we all get along. And so, next thing you know, all three of us moved back to the Twin Cities.
You were all living somewhere outside of Minnesota?
Yeah, Rick
Wow.
was in Kansas City, Liz was up in Michigan, and I was in California. And within several months, we quit our jobs and whatever, and just moved back. And my dad was in really two businesses, banking business and real estate. And he was trying to get into the radio business, which I don't know why that's what he wanted to do. And he'd been out looking to maybe buy a radio station or whatever. And so Rick and Liz and we kind of divvied things up. And Rick said, well, I'd like to work in the banks. And I said, I'd like to be in the real estate business. And Liz said, I think the radio business is right up my alley. So we kind of went off on that direction. And I just, from my standpoint, I did some leasing. I got my real estate license. I, oversaw some of the apartment projects that we owned or managed. And that's sort of how I got into the business 26 years
Wow.
ago or whatever it's been. So it's been a long time. And shortly after I moved back, just before I moved back, I met Patty. And not too many years after I moved back, we got married, which is kind of a fun story. But
Yes,
anyway.
I know a little bit about that story. Patty, I didn't realize that you really have, I know you as a residential real estate agent and super successful in that, but you have a culinary background.
Right.
Like, you went to culinary school?
Yep. After college, when I went to college, I focused on journalism and mass comm. So
Really?
kind of a general degree, but focused on journalism. And I had a thought that if this college thing doesn't work out, I've always enjoyed cooking and I want to go to cooking school. But what happened when I was in college, I met someone who was a food writer, food reporter, food critic, who sort of mentored me through the process. And so I really enjoyed getting to know him. And he said, if you're going to go to cooking school, just go to the Culinary Institute of America. It's the best. And
Where is that?
It's in Hyde Park, New York.
Okay,
Yeah.
fun.
So I looked at a couple of other schools, but it was a very inclusive 21-month program. It was an overview. So after college, I moved to New York and went to school there it was interesting at that time. It probably still is primarily male dominated, but it was definitely 75% male. So it was a very bravissimo type, environment, and sort of old world European chefs that like to yell quite loudly.
Oh, interesting.
And yeah, it was it was not like making Toll House cookies with your sister. I'll put it that way. It was not like that at all.
That's kind of what I picture it like being.
Oh no, it was not. This was a lot of burly guys and learning how to cook, and in traditional or classical French styles, and we touched on all sorts of different aspects of cooking. And so I did that, and I did some writing for I worked for the press office at the Culinary Institute and wrote some articles for trade journals, and I thought, I want to be a food writer. That's what I want to do. So didn't end up doing that necessarily, because, and the reality sets in that you have to go get a job.
There is that.
And at the same time, I was living in upstate New York. Those are the true New Yorkers. I mean, New York City is more of a melting pot. You go there, I think there's a mix of people, but upstate New York, you get the real strong personalities of. And I think being from the Midwest, it's like one day I woke up and I said, I want to move to Minneapolis. My brother and sister were here, and I just wanted to move here.
Where were you? Where did you grow up?
We moved around quite a bit. For the most part, Madison, Wisconsin.
Okay.
So, and my parents moved to Savannah, Georgia. So, the family home was gone, and so I just thought I'm going to move to Minneapolis.
Interesting.
I don't know why. It was just a light bulb. So.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, isn't that interesting?
Mm-hmm.
And so your first job, or the job when you got in Minneapolis?
I took a job with Dayton's. They had a food division, a catering division, and someone new came to work in the division that was from the Washington, D.C. area, and we took the idea of there's the Dayton's Oval Room, right? So let's be the Oval Room of catering, and let's go off-premise. So I had a very cool job for 7 years. It was amazing how everything that I got to do was do all of these high-end events in people's homes, but, museums, all the galas, fundraisers. And so I was not cooking during that time. I was working with clients and customizing menus with the chefs and coordinating all of the logistics. And so I did that for a long time. And at one point, I was planning a wedding for someone who was going to have the wedding at his parents' house on Lake Minnetonka. Went out and met with someone, John Wall, and his mother. And so we were planning the wedding, and he was moving his fiance back from California as he was coming to work for the family business. And I think I would just say that, we kind of knew as we were planning it, we're like, I don't know that they're really communicating about the options, and there was a tasting downtown, and I saw some tiers, and I thought, well, there's many types of salad greens. We can switch to Boston Bib or, leafy romaine. I don't know. And then what had ended up happening was they ended up calling off the wedding about 10 days before.
So I want John to take it from here, because the way he tells the story is so endearing about what the connection was with this caterer. You just said she kept showing up, or there was just, he said you were the nicest part of that whole really uncomfortable experience.
Yes.
Yeah, it was one of the worst parts of my life. I mean, I was going to get married, then we called it off, and which was was the worst thing I've ever done to anybody. It was just the whole thing was horrible. And then to call all the vendors, the band and the tent people and the flower people and we had all this stuff going, and the caterer, and tell them, gee, I'm really sorry, but we've decided to call off the wedding. And most of them said, well, sorry you're losing your deposit. The band actually sued me, and but the caterer of all the people said, I'm really sorry for you. That's I feel so bad, and all I can say is, someday if you decide to have another another big event, whatever, I hope you think of Dayton's Catering. And I just thought that was so nice. I mean, I gave the deposit back. It was prime. Anyway, I don't want to drag this out too long.
Smart human.
So yeah, and so I ran into and I officed in the IDS building immediately across the street from Dayton's where she worked. So we'd run into each other, occasionally in the Skyway or events. I'd go to real estate events that were catered or, other things that were. I mean, it just seemed to run into her all the time. And so I thought, what, I should invite her out to lunch, thank her for her kind, thoughtful response to this whole debacle. And so we went out to lunch, and
We really didn't officially start dating until about a year after the wedding was called
Right.
off. So no,
Right.
Patty did not get in there with her claws and break up the wedding and da 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 da. It wasn't
No, it
anything
wasn't
like
like
that.
that.
Of course,
at
of
all.
course.
Of course not.
but it
No.
worked out well.
No, and truly my thoughts at that time were if his mother, if his mother turned to 10 people and said, if this situation happened and this business treated us so graciously and responsibly. So that was
There'd be more
the point. But then we just kept running into each other everywhere. I mean, really corners of the Twin Cities. So
It was
yeah.
meant to be.
It was meant to be.
Apparently so. Yeah.
And so you continued on kind of in the kind of catering and in that,
Yeah.
and eventually got your real estate license as well, right?
I did. After we had our son Jack, I realized that catering and being a new mother was something that didn't blend together very well.
The hours aren't so
Balance.
good.
No, the hours are not so good. So I went to work for kitchen window planning events at the cooking school and doing, activating the cooking school in between their regular curriculum, which was fun, while, and then we had our daughter, Lauren, and then John was starting to get into developing condominiums in St. Paul. And I thought, well, if you're going to do it in St. Paul, because I had a condo in St. Paul previously, and I love St. Paul. And so I said, well, I want to work on that. So I got my real estate license. And to this day, I've kept my license at Coldwell Banker on Grand Avenue, Crocus Hill, because I love the team over there. And so we worked together on, we worked on the design.
Was that the
finishes.
first ground up project that you worked on, like from the start to
No,
finish?
actually, we don't have to get into every single detail, but the first time was we built the Stone Arch Apartments in Minneapolis, 221 apartment units, and at the time, and she doesn't say it quite the same way, but she's like, I need something else to do. This staying home with the kids thing is not as fulfilling, or what. I won't put words in her mouth, but so I said, well, it just so happens we're building, 220 unit apartment building, and I got to find 220 renters. Would you, come down and join the team? And I thought that was fabulous. I mean, it was just, they did a great job, owner selling, renting to renters. I mean, it was a beautiful project. They did a great job, very successful. Then, a couple of years later, we started in on the Western Row condominiums on Western and St. Paul. Also, fabulous project, high end, high price, the whole thing was just really nice. And Patty did a great job. Just, she's just, that's her sweet spot, is selling really good things. It's really that, so.
Selling, and it was fun for me to delve into the world, as part of the design build process too, and picking finishes and decorating models and the marketing aspects of it. It was fun. And I realized from when I graduated from cooking school too. I mean, I worked in sales from age 24 on, so I'd always worked in sales, and then. I think fast forward so many years later, I really, as our kids got older, I really wanted to get back into the food world. I enjoyed real estate tremendously, but food was where my North Star, my passion was at. And I remember, my kids were in middle school or something, and I remember they came home after school, and one of them, no names, said, Mom, why don't you ever do anything?
Oh my goodness.
Why don't you? And I'm thinking, okay, so they see me going to the gym, to yoga, shopping, drinking wine with my friends, an occasional real estate deal. And I thought, ding dong, Patty, you're not making, and I was thinking, I want to be there for these tough years, even though it's really hard. But I thought, I don't want them to take the wrong path. But that was kind of a moment where I thought, my kids don't think I do anything.
Oh, jeez.
Which, there's a
is-
couple of reactions you can have to that. It's one of horror and okay, this is the outside looking in. And we would take a trip every year with John's family, and we were taking a trip to Alaska. And we went to Vancouver, and we went to Granville Island and walked around. And I'm looking around, I'm going, what is this place? This is amazing. This is every kind of gorgeous produce display, seafood, meat counters, wine, craft beer, street tacos, lobster rolls, anything you want. But I think the thing that resounded with me was it was a community gathering space surrounded by public art. And you could see people that were there that were alone. They were with co-workers with their suits on, or they were family, young, old. And I said to John, I think I know what I want to do with the rest of my life. I think we need to do this in the Twin Cities. And so that kind of started that journey.
I didn't know that story. That is super neat. Meanwhile, you had been working on a 20-acre piece of property. How did you go to acquire? How did you get to acquire?
Well,
Before you got more, I'm sorry.
yeah, that's right. I had a couple of deals, several deals going on in the real estate business. After we finished the Stone Arch Apartments, we built a couple of different condominium projects. I mentioned Western Row, and around about 1999, I hired a guy who helped me with this idea, came up with the idea of doing a university-related science park. I didn't know what that was, but it sounded like something good, and so we went on. We picked an area over in the Prospect Park neighborhood, a bunch of blighted industrial buildings, and it was very exciting project. All these old buildings, and so I spent a lot of time, buying up the land, tearing down old buildings, getting the approvals, trying to find tenants that would occupy new buildings we would build on this site. And then we got a couple other apartment buildings we were working on, and one of them, called Mill City Quarter, and down by the riverfront in Minneapolis, 150 units. First floor was going to be a CVS drugstore, and we got CVS on board. We got the city to approve the project. We lined up the financing. We're all ready to go. And then CVS Drugstore called and said, we've changed our mind. We're not going to be your first floor tenant anymore. So here I got a building with 15,000 square feet of nothing, right? And but we got to build the building. And so anyway, I was telling Patty that I just lost CVS, and you have any good ideas of what we could put there? And her first idea was this Granville Island model of something. And you mentioned all the food. Granville Island also had, books and candles and clothes and touristy stuff. It's a huge building. And Granville Island itself is, an adorable festival retail area. It's got a little college, a little hotel, marinas all around there. It's just gorgeous. And as much as I liked the Mill City Quarter apartment site down by the Depot Hotel and the Carlisle condominiums, it didn't seem like the right fit. First of all, we didn't have really much extra parking for the public, and it's new construction. So I said, well, I like the idea, but I don't think that's going to work there. But we've got a bunch of old buildings over by Prospect Park. Let's go take a look over there. Maybe we could find something. And I think immediately we settled on this one building that's just...
So what year was that?
2016, 2017,
Yeah,
sometime around
15,
there.
16,
I think.
17, somewhere in there. I think we bought the building. Well, and I guess that was part of it too. We'd been buying up all these buildings to eventually get to about 20 acres of land, sort of like buying the donut first, and then we bought the whole last.
Okay.
And the whole is where this building is. It was kind of the last piece, the infill piece. So when we bought that, that's where, and it had, that one building actually was a site with 9 buildings on it. The one we bought was in bad shape. The rest of them were substantially worse. I mean, this was the best of the bunch, and it wasn't very good. And after, we went on to try and get it approved, and we spent a fair amount of time working on this. In the meantime, the building got vandalized, and the roof fell in, and
There was a fire.
somebody broke in there in January and set the thing on. Actually, I think what they did is they set a fire to keep warm that caught the building on fire. I don't think it was an all-out arson attempt, but at any rate, I had a friend, business associate I was working with who called me, which just so happens I was out in Seattle at the time, and he called and he said, "John, the building's on fire. The fire department's here. What do you want me to tell them?" And I said, "Well, don't let them put it out. I mean, the building's a wreck." And well, needless to say, the fire department wouldn't take no for an answer, so they put the fire out, and then like I say, with Patty's encouragement and vision, we decided that this food hall would be a good idea. It'd be, well, actually, it was sort of paired with another piece, which I don't know if it's all that critical, but I went to the neighborhood and I said, I've been working on this science park idea for the longest time, and quite frankly, I'm not getting anywhere. It's not working. I can't get the U on board. I can't get the tenants to come in. I don't know what to do. I think what I need to do is take one little piece of this site and go build some apartments and get a little momentum on our side of the transitway. So show people that there's life after industrial on this side of the tracks. So I went to the neighborhood and I said, the city staff's telling me I can't do this. I need you guys to come with me to City Hall, to Planning Commission, and City Council and say, we like John's vision. We think you should let him do some apartment buildings and get this momentum going. And I said, well, that would be great because I think I'm going to need your help. And they said, well, we want something too, though. I'm like, really? What do you want?
That's scary.
It's like, I'm sure you do. Anyway, so they said, we want 2 things. The first thing was, we want that old building that was now the market of Malcom Yards, that old building, which I quite frankly had always planned to tear down at some point. We want you to keep that building. And I said, okay, well, it's a cute building. I give you that. So I said, all right, you said 2 things. What's the other thing? Well, that big grain elevator that says United Crushers up on the top. Beast of, it's 60,000 square foot footprint. It was the largest grain storage facility in the country.
Really?
When it was built.
Really?
That complex, yes. It's big.
Yeah, it is.
And they said, we want you to keep that too. And honestly, I laughed in their face. I'm like, well, you got to be kidding. What could I possibly do with that building? And they said, all I know, John, is that we've been looking out our window for 100 years, that building. It's what made this neighborhood. And if you tear it down now, it's gone forever. Our history goes with it. So you got to figure out how to keep that building.
Wow.
And I said, tell you what, I will try. I won't guarantee it, because if I try my hardest and there's nothing to do, I cannot afford to own a monument for the neighborhood and pay taxes on it and try and keep kids out of the building. But I'll try. And I have. And maybe we'll come back to that later. But
Yeah.
but the first building was this. So we're like, all right, we're going to do a food hall, and we found a contractor we liked. We found an architect we thought we liked, and said, can you help us with this? And so with Patty's help and the marketing people, we got a brochure, and we decided we're going to do this food hall. We're going to go visit some to see what it's all about. And then we got a call. I got a call from a guy, and he called me a couple times. I'm kind of embarrassed I wasn't as responsive as I probably should have been, but I said, well, all right, come in next Tuesday and see me. So he comes in, see Patty and I, and he's all excited. He's got these, I want this, you got this land right across from Surly Brewing. I'd like to do a food hall there. And Patty and I looked at each other and turned and handed him the brochure that we already had on a food hall for this site. And poor guy was just crushed. It's like, I had this great idea and you already thought of it. Dang, and so, but he said, we've done a couple of these in Denver. Like, did you say you're from Denver? And he said, yeah, we've got a team and we've done several of these. And I'm like, well, maybe we should do this together. We've never done it before. I agree, it's a great idea, but so we ended up partnering with this group from Denver who was very helpful in getting us started. And I'll let you tell how
Isn't
that.
Isn't it funny when you should bring Reed on this? I have a totally different recollection of how this whole thing went down. But,
that's so funny.
and it wasn't as, Patty, we do this food hall. I spent a lot of time convincing him, if you're going to office and residential, this is the amenity that's going to keep your apartments full. This is going to keep your offices full. This is what people want. And I had a lot of pushback from certain couple of men in general at the wall companies. And terrible idea. And so we traveled around the country and met with other food hall developers and saw how these food halls start to gentrify some neighborhoods that are run down. So, and looking at the Harris Machinery building, which we had on the site, it was a natural fit being a brick and timber building. Now, someone did set it on fire. The fire department was told that it was a historic property. So during some of the coldest days of the year, they brought in city buses to sort of house the firefighters temporarily. So they would put this fire out, and they worked very hard to keep the fire out because they heard it was a historic building, but it really wasn't. But
It was old.
And I had pushed this idea on John about the food hall, and he said, well, just start talking to people. And I said, well, who's going to want to talk to me? And he goes, I think you'd be really surprised who's going to want to talk to you about this. And I am so blown away at, I spent 2 years just talking to as many people as I could, and everybody, with the exception of one, not John, but was very positive about the whole idea. And then we met one of our partners. He came in, he called and said, well, I have a food hall idea. And I showed him the brochure. I needed a brochure because I'd been talking to chefs and put together a website. And so it all, we spent a long time getting our partnership together, and we worked together to get this done. But I will tell you one funny thing. John was saying, we hired a contractor, and we found an architecture team, and we also worked with some architects from Denver. And we were meeting with a construction company, and several, we had a handful of meetings going over what we were going to do with this building. And I remember sitting there, and it was, it was all men. The entire project was pretty much all men and me. And this contractor, none of the guys would look at me or talk to me or take anything I said seriously. And I said to John, I'm not working with these people. This is my project, and if they can't look at me or hear what comes out of my mouth, I'm not interested. And then in came Dave Kalorgeson, who looks like Ross on Friends. And
Oh, funny.
he's a super smiley guy. And he really guided us on, you don't need to rebuild the gabled roof line and do all this stuff. And he showed us what was possible. And he was really energetic, and we became fast friends. And I was like, this is who I want to work with. I want to work with someone that shares my passion for this. So that was kind of how we got started. And then, we met with a lot of developers around the country that had done this. And they all said we were crazy, but...
Well, I mean, you had such a vision, and I mean, I remember you talking about it for a while. It felt like it took a long time for it to come to fruition, and because you worked on it
years.
Yeah,
It was years in the making. Sort of our tagline is Malcom Yards in the making.
Got it.
And I remember reading an article that a journalist said, it has been years in the making.
Oh, that's funny.
Thought, that hurt. Ouch.
Yeah.
So,
I saw one article that said it's supposed to open this summer, but we're not really sure when it's going to open. Like, you know, it's like that's
Years before
it's
it did
still to
open,
be
yeah.
seen or something like that. You know, so it was like there was a lot of talk about it, but it was and then you create it. So you're in the process of creating this. So and I think you kind of alluded to last week when we were chatting about how your skill sets are so different, the way you go about things. And it makes sense, right? You've got the real estate background, you've got the food background, but how did your different skill sets make this happen? How did you come together to, what was your role that, you really, that was your piece? Obviously you acquired the property and all that, but how did you guys work together on this?
In the end, we did it her way. Just to get to the punchline. But
so you're both smart people.
So I'm the real estate guy, or my team, and so we're trying to plan this as a master planned community. I mean, it's not just about the food hall. And just for the record, although most people refer to the market at Malcom Yards as just Malcom Yards, that Malcom Yards is the whole neighborhood. And matter of fact, I've gone so far as to say it actually includes Surly Brewing and O'Shaughnessy Distillery, which are across Malcolm Avenue. And when I called Omar, the owner of Surly, and asked him, do you mind if I refer to Surly Brewing as Surly Brewing at Malcom Yards? He's like, yeah, as long as you spell my name right, that's fine. I don't really care. And with O'Shaughnessy, I said, this is. So I think everybody's sort of on board, but when you start with the first building, it just seems like, well, this is really all we have here. But this is a community we're building, and it is so fun, and it is just so grateful to have a chance to do that. I mean, most people don't get a chance to take this big a chunk and do kind of great things with it. So anyway, so Malcom Yards. So I'm kind of more on the bigger picture. Although Patty's been very instrumental in that as well, trying to implement art throughout the development, and what kind of buildings and how we place them, and of course the master plan is on our website, at malcomyards.com. It hasn't evolved exactly the way we planned, and we'll see how it ends up. I'm not sure even today I know exactly how it's going to turn out, but. So far, we have the market at Malcom Yards, and the 2 apartment buildings are the station at Malcom Yards and the flats at Malcom Yards, and a new street that goes in between those two. We sold some land to the O'Shaughnessy family to build O'Shaughnessy Distillery, which I, again, consider to be part of Malcom Yards, although it's wholly owned by them. We don't have anything to do with that per se, although I think with Surly Brewing and the market and O'Shaughnessy and the market at Malcom Yards make a really fun kind of, what do you call it? The
kind of a triangle.
Trifecta.
Or trifecta.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Just fun stuff to do in the neighborhood, So I think that, and as to Patty's point earlier, it really is a draw. I mean, and I guess the proof is still in the pudding. We're building 2 apartment buildings that will open this summer, 350 units between the 2 of them, and we're pushing hard that you're in Malcom Yards. You're in a neighborhood with fun things to do here. This would be a great place to live, notwithstanding convenient transit. University of Minnesota, the light rail, all the other, great things about this part of town, but the market at Malcom Yards and the Sterling and O'Shaughnessy and whatever. Anyway, I just think it's really fun to be able to do all that. And I forgot the question now.
Well, no, I think that you're kind of more big picture and
how we work together.
And how you work together. And then you had the vision. I feel like a lot of it was Patty's vision, right? Like, or you worked together on it, but like to create this building that was half burned down, a half, dilapidated old building, and full of graffiti and all kinds of stuff, and turn it into what it is today. Like, I don't even know how did you have that vision, or how did that?
Well, it was in part by visiting so many different food halls and doing research, but as we went around the country and visited different food halls, which we've seen quite a few, I realized what it was like from the guest experience to walk into some of these places and how cumbersome it was to, okay, I'm going to go get a drink. I'm going to go get food. Okay, how do I do this? How do I order? Where do I stand? I don't know what's going on. And it taps into some of your social insecurities. And I thought there's a better way to do this. And we are, we didn't get into this, but our neighborhood, Malcom Yards, is part of a larger innovation district called Towerside. And I thought, well, with all of the technology that's out there, there's got to be a way to do this. So we opened with a point of sale system that guests come in, they swipe their credit card, we check their ID, put a wristband on them, and they come in, and it's a very collaborative experience and very easy from the guest perspective. You can go get a drink right away at the Boxcar Bar. We have,
which is important.
Well, I just
important.
remember I have to credit, actually, we did a lot of catering for families, and was a member of a very well-known, successful family in the Twin Cities.
You can name her by name. You're giving her credit.
Yeah, well, it was actually, we did a lot of catering for the Pohlads, and Becky Pohlad, I remember she had a rule with all of her house parties. She said, the minute these guests walk in, I want them to have a drink in their hands. And if you think about it, I think whether you get to a restaurant or a social engagement, a party, what is that first thing you want in your hands? Whether you're drinking alcohol or not.
Right, just it's kind of a security thing.
And it's a security thing.
It's like someone took care of you.
Yeah.
But it's also, I think, when you go into a new place or something, it's like, okay, I could use a little drink to take the edge off.
Right,
So,
right, I agree.
And, and I said, guests, and I've always kept that. I think, it was a good life lesson. I think people want to get a drink in their hands right away, and you need to make it easy. It needs to be quick. We're right next to a football stadium. So we have thousands of people coming in after football games. So we did batch cocktails on tap. So the bartender grabs a glass, specialty ice, fills the cocktail, garnishes it, hands it to you. You tap your card for payment. It links to your tab. Then you go order food at any one of the kitchens. You tap your card, you put your first name and cell phone number in one time, and you get texted when your food's ready. So there's no mystery about what you do. We did something that's relatively new in Minnesota. We incorporated a self-pour beer wall where we have beer and wine. We did not put hard liquor on it because we're so close to the University of Minnesota, and thinking, 25 ounces of vodka soda is a little different than 25 ounces of Surly. So, but you can go up and you can try different craft beers. And we go through during our busier times, about 200 kegs of beer a week.
Wow.
And so all of the, Midwest breweries give us all of their special brews. And so people come from all over to try these beers, and we put some wine and some Prosecco on the wall. And so you can just help yourself, and then you can go get food, do whatever you want. And then when you're ready to leave, you just drop the card off at the door, and then you get texted a receipt. So it's, the technology's there. The workflow of the whole place is there. I met with all the chefs, sort of handpicked all the chefs in all the kitchens, licensed them out, did lots of tastings, made sure the food was exceptional. And
one of your vendors won best pizza in the country just
that's
recently.
correct. Yes, on Good
you have
Morning
a good
America.
you're good at taste tester.
And I will tell you, when I tried that pizza, I knew we were going to have a pizza kitchen in the food hall. And I mean, Midwestern girls, we love our cheese, right? We love our bread, we love our cheese, but pizza, we're not screwing around here. And when I had this pizza, I actually brought my father-in-law along to the tasting, and
Love it.
he has his suit on, his three-piece suit, pinstripe suit, and we go to meet with Jeff and Alex and Brianna, and Jeff comes out of the kitchen with a chef's coat, boxer shorts, socks, hiking boots, a bandana on his beard, and he's like, "This is the shredder, Patty." And so we tried the pizza and talked, and I'm like, "This is out of this world." Everything, all of the food that we chose was stuff that I knew was craveable, that people would want to come back for. And then there's all sorts of stuff about the building and why we kept the building, but adaptive reuse of a building from the 1800s. We have our challenges with the building. I mean, there's a lot of upkeep with that, but I think
it's amazing. I mean, you've kept so much of the character, and we were talking about the graffiti. A lot of the graffiti is still there. You had to clean it up a little, but
we had to sort of mute out some not so family friendly things. Someone did spray paint. What is it? Velvet is doing fake Coke.
Velvet stopped doing fake Coke.
Velvet stopped doing fake Coke. Somebody spray painted that on one of the walls, and so we had the Velvet Martini in her honor for quite a while at the bar. So
we don't know who it was or what.
You don't know who Velvet is,
any
but
of that, but
but God
it was
help her,
interesting.
she's doing fake Coke. I mean, so she needed a martini in her honor.
That's
right?
awesome.
So, but there's so many iterations. I mean, what John has done in the vision for buying this land starting in '99 and having to completely switch it up halfway through. I mean, the tenacity that he had in this project is incredible. And the fact that he listened to my idea and believed in me and supported me in doing this was very cool. And he was the sort of the solid person in this. And as we were going through this process, there's so many, we had to rezone, take 9 months to rezone. And I had all these kitchens lined up, and we had to. There were some hard blows, and I have no idea. To the commercial real estate developers, I'm like, I have no idea how you people make any money doing this, or why you stay in it, because it's so hard. It's years of hard work, and it takes forever to be paid for that hard work. And there's a lot of, you get shoved down. And then you get back up, start digging again, and we had some pretty big blows during it, and I would say to John, I'm just taking a break, and he'd be like, get back out there,
Yeah.
go downtown, go to the office, start talking to people, make phone calls, do this, and so.
Well, you two make an incredible team. You both picked industries that are really hard, honestly.
Yeah.
There's nothing harder than running a restaurant, and then you chose to run a restaurant with 10 different restaurateurs in it, or I'm sorry, what's the number?
We have 9 kitchens, a bar, a self-pour wall, and we do tons of events. So we didn't know if anybody was going to come when we did this. And we've now been asked by developers all over the country to open these because the model has been so successful. And yeah.
It's really nice. It's flattering. I remember walking in the door after what seemed like forever building this thing. The contractors, Patty worked mostly with the chefs and all that, but the city, the approvals. I go to the city and say, I want to do this. They say, well, tell me about it. And I said 9 kitchens and whatever. And the city says, well, in my book, that's a shopping center. And this isn't zoned for that, so you'll have to rezone the property. I'm like, really?
Really?
And we the liquor thing was kind of I may have told you that before too, but the whole concept is you go from place to place. Everybody gets what they want. They all meet in the middle. They enjoy their beverages and their different food selections. And the Minnesota State Liquor License says, we had a consultant. He's like, you can't do that. And,
So you just changed laws to make this happen.
Yeah, so I asked consultant Jim Erickson, I plug for Jim, I said, what do we do? This is our whole thing. He says, well, I don't think you can do that. And I said, well, we have to, or we're going to just quit right now. And he goes, well, you could change the law.
Wow.
And again, I laughed in his face. I'm like, really? Who changes the law? The law. You can't just change the law. He's like, well, that's what I do. I'm a lobbyist, and I'll show you how to do it. And so we changed the law in the state of Minnesota to do what we wanted to do at our address in Minneapolis, 501 30th Avenue Southeast, Minneapolis, only.
Wow.
And we got it done. And it took a while. It took some money, and it took, I had our freshman senator in the car driving around showing her the whole vision, and then Jim helped, like, here's how we do this, and you introduce this, and we'll get the people to support you. And we've learned so much. Honestly, I think if you'd have told me then all the stuff we were going to have to do, I'm like, yeah, that's too hard. I'm not doing that.
Right,
but we didn't
look
know.
what you created, and it's so successful, and there's so many people there, and it's beautiful, and it's fun. You guys are an amazing team. I'm not sure there's anything you can't tackle. It's pretty impressive.
Well, we'll see.
We'll see.
More to come. Well, thanks so much for taking the time
Thank you,
today.
Lisa.
This was so fun. You guys are amazing.
Thank you.
Are we done?